I am joined today by Daniel Vassallo. After bravely deciding to leave corporate America in his high paying, highly coveted position as a software engineer with Amazon, Daniel launched a number of ventures, including a very successful online community, Small Bets, which I'm very grateful and very proud to be a member. Since 2019, Daniel has continued working for himself and has continued to inspire others like myself to do the same. Daniel, thank you so much for being in my orbit and for joining me today on Cupalo Conversations.
Thank you, Lauren. No, happy to be here. Looking forward to talk more about this.
Awesome. Well, I certainly want to get into how you left corporate America, but I would love to find out more about your journey into corporate America. Do you mind walking me through that?
Yeah, so very straightforward. I was interested in computers since I was a little kid. My dream was to make software, initially making games like many kids, and then sort of got into becoming fascinated with software. Went into university, studied computer science, a very typical path. I'm originally from Malta in Europe, very small country, and there were a couple of opportunities in tech, very small companies, however. And after school, I joined a couple of local companies, and I was learning, I was enjoying the work, but I sort of started to realize that I'm missing out from sort of seeing how the sausage is made in in the big leagues, and I started to be tempted to consider joining one of the big tech companies. Long story short, me and my girlfriend, now wife, moved to Ireland. This was 2009. Ireland, Dublin was a bit of the Silicon Valley of Europe back then, right? Because of tax reasons, most of the big tech companies were sort of setting up headquarters there. And we moved without a job, actually. Like we said, we have 3 months. We're going to try to find something. If it doesn't work out, we go back. And long story short, my wife found a job very quickly at Microsoft. And a couple of weeks later, I got hired at AWS at Amazon. And it started going well. After a couple of years, I got promoted. I was invited to move to Seattle. And Amazon, despite their reputation, was treating me quite well. And I was very much loyal to the team the team I joined in Ireland in early 2010. When I moved to Seattle, I was part of the same team. I stayed in the same team, and basically I ended up staying there for almost 9 years. So I only left in 2019. And when I joined, I thought it was going to be temporary, right? And I joined with the expectation that I'm going to be trying to learn as much as I can. It's a new thing, very different, not just from the level of technology, but also the corporate structure. Again, I was used until then to working with very small companies, like 20 employees, where your boss is the owner, that kind of thing. Whereas Amazon was completely different. So there was a bit of a culture shock there as well, with just getting things done. And even to be honest, even a technological ability shock in the beginning. At first, I thought, oh my God, I can't do anything here. But I think I had a bit of a lucky break. My team needed something about a month in that I was somewhat competent in, and I think that probably saved my job back then. Right? And after that, I think the momentum was on, and I was doing well. But I think I always had the inclination to do something for myself. It was never clear what it was going to be. So back then, I was in my 20s. I was thinking, this is just a skill acquisition part of my life. I'm going to learn as much as possible. We'll figure something out later. But I think what was interesting is that in the middle part of my tenure at Amazon, I sort of a little bit fell into the trap of thinking, actually, probably this is it. And I was getting paid really well. I was being told there was even more opportunity here, that I was on the right path, and so on and so forth. And I was reasoning about my career in financial terms, and I was thinking, there's probably no other path that I could take that's going to have a better expected value in terms of lifetime earning potential. Like I was imagining quitting to do something for myself, like even just a few, maybe months or years where you're not making much, just to recoup that gap, right? What probably take a long time, let alone to meet that level and exceed it. So I was thinking in those terms until, right, a few years later, I think something ticked in me. And maybe it was, we had kids, and, it wasn't just focus on work, there was family. And I started to realize that despite seemingly all the good things, again, being treated well, having a prestigious job, being paid really well, and it was, I wouldn't call it maybe a cushy job, but after 8 years in the same team, I was at a level where I didn't feel like the pressure that I was going to get fired or whatever. Like, it felt like pretty much comfortable there. But despite all these things, I started to feel that probably a career as a full-time employee wasn't the right one for me. Right, sort of this having to ask people for permission, working on somebody else's terms, all sorts of little purposeless tasks we had to do that I felt were purposeless. Maybe others felt they weren't, right? But sort of, I was doing them pretty much against my my will. Were wearing me out. I think were eating me mentally, right? So were eroding my motivation, my enjoyment, and I'm sure they affected my health probably in some ways. I mean, not in a drastic way, but there was something not working out. Right? Too, and it came to a point where I felt like, I actually can't do another year here. So, I mean, I wasn't, again, it was almost to a level of desperation. Like, I mean, I really can't see myself continuing, right? And the timing worked well, right? End of 2018, I wrapped up a project that I was leading, and I realized, look, this is the time. I gave my notice end of 2018, had some vacation, handed over all my things, and again, I took a journey into the unknown without anything planned. The desire now wasn't even to make it big or whatever. The desire was just to not go back there. I just, that chapter is closed. I don't want to become a full-time employee ever again, ideally, right? Which might sound like a privileged thing, right? But it's it's a realization that I got that I learned about myself, right? That this work arrangement of the Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, this consistency, the slog of working that way was really incompatible with how I like to work on it. So yeah, very quick overview maybe of how it happened till now.
Oh, it's remarkable. There's a lot of people who would love to do what you did and what you continue to do these past few years. I would love to know, because I'm not on Twitter or X. I heard that you had shared in a tweet your total comp package that you had walked away from. Would you mind sharing that today? Because again, for people who don't know, I think it lends a lot more color to what you ended up, in context to what you ended up leaving behind.
Yeah, so the last full year I was at Amazon, I made $511,000 in total comp, like base salary plus RSUs, but I was getting a stock vesting every 6 months, which basically is cash equivalent. Yeah, the last 3 years were over 400K, right? So it was growing. And again, it wasn't even just that. It was the understanding that there was even more to make by staying there. Right? It was made super clear to me, and I was friends with lots of people who were maybe a level up more than me, so I knew how much they were making and so on and so forth. So I have to admit that, I mean, leaving that behind, and I had about 950,000 of unvested stock that was going to vest in the next couple of years that I had to rescind by leaving. I remember ticking the box in my exit form or whatever it was, and I felt a bit in my stomach, because to be honest, I think I almost felt a bit selfish. That again, like, I have a family, I already had 2 kids back then, I have 3 now, and it felt like this wasn't even just my own money, right? It's sort of money that my family could be sharing as well, right? So I completely understand the struggle, right? It's not easy. It wasn't easy for me, seeing it again from the financial perspective. But certainly I don't regret it. So it's been now almost 6 years self-employed. There wasn't a single year that I matched the same level of income that I was making then, and I will be fully content even if I never get to that level ever again, right? I'm making enough to be comfortable, right? So there's no problems and we're living a comfortable lifestyle. Of course, I'm ambitious. I'm not going to lie. I'd like to make more, right? It's sort of part of the fun of entrepreneurship, but it's sort of this acceptance that life is multidimensional. I could have continued to optimize for lifetime earning potential, and that was very obvious. I think staying in that path, maybe moving to another company, moving to Google or moving to Facebook might have been the card to play if I wanted to continue to make as much money as possible with the highest probability possible. But I realized that at the end of the day, I mean, what's the point of earning money, right? What is it? Is it to make your life better, the life of your family better? And certainly it didn't look to me that was the best arrangement, right, for that goal. And I think at this stage, that both me and my family are better off with the flexibility that I have, and with the level of independence and so on, despite sort of leaving that behind. I think in terms of both the stability, right, which certainly is something that I had before and I had less of now, the income volume and the prestige. Not that I give it a lot of value, but you have to say it's there as well. But yeah, it's like many things in life, it's trade-offs, and I think it's important to realize, life is multiple dimensions, and you try to get the best of all the dimensions of focusing on just one thing.
You touched on feeling guilty when you were checking that box off of the money you were going to leave on the table with your family in mind. You mentioned a privileged position. Have you ever felt guilty that you figured it out, that you found a way to make great money still, to have the lifestyle that you want to lead, the time, the quality with your family and your friends? Because again, there's so many people who are following the same path in corporate America, looking at you going, what the hell, buddy? Like, why do you, like, how did you do it? Do you ever feel guilty? Forget your family, but other people too. I'm curious if that's ever been something you've had to grapple with.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'm certainly cognizant, right? That there's lots of luck and being in the right place at the right time. I mean, again, like if I look at my journey, there were many. It's funny, right? I mean, a couple of interesting anecdotes. When I got called for the Amazon interview when I was in Dublin, I remember there was some mishap with the calendar, and I was at IKEA, right, where I was just parking the IKEA, and I received a call from, "Hey, I'm from Amazon. I'm going to do the phone interview. Are you ready?" And I said, "What?" The guy realized that I wasn't expecting it, and said, "You weren't expecting it anyway. Maybe you should reschedule." But it's interesting that I could have very easily not taken the call. I was in this parking space underground, and they might have written me off as no show, and that's it, right? This wasn't I wasn't referred to by someone. I just applied, like randomly, which is interesting to reflect. My life would have been very different if that didn't happen. Maybe still good, but who knows. There were some other, even when I was invited to move to Seattle, initially I said no. Actually, I was liking when I was living there. I had just moved there. And even now, again, like I'm very happy that I moved to the US. Back then, I said no, and then sort of it was my manager convincing me to move. So lots of serendipity. This is like the chaos theory, right? The butterfly flaps its wings and the tropical forest, and it causes a tornado on the other side of the world. There were many of those things happening. I don't feel guilty in the guilty of like having done something wrong or having benefited from something that I shouldn't have. I think it's important for people to realize that life is much more random than it seems. You're dealt cards when you're born, right? And that's how we know, it's probably one of the most important privileges. I wasn't born in the US, for example, right? I think that's a benefit that many people who are born here, which I think helps a lot. Right? I had to go to quite a grueling immigration process. Certainly not the worst. I mean, again, like there are many people who suffer even more to get access to the US. But I had my incidents. I came in with an L1 visa. It was temporary, then it almost expired. My renewal got rejected. I was given 2 months to In fact, I were arranging with Amazon back then to maybe move to Canada or maybe to Dublin. And then again, another lucky strike. There was this executive order by Obama. He sort of advanced the green card process, and all of a sudden, I managed to get the green card in the last minute. So again, like a very random thing, like that. If it didn't happen, my life would have been very different. So it's interesting to reflect on these things. I certainly wouldn't recommend anyone to feel guilty about their journey. I think I like to feel. I feel certainly. I feel proud with how I've approached the things that I've chosen, right? And that's certainly a principle that I keep in mind. I want to, towards the end of my life, look back and be proud of the journey that I've taken and the decisions that I've made. I'm sure I want, that there will be some that might not be the ideal ones. But with the information I had, with the judgment that I had, that I want to feel proud, and that's probably the better way to look at these things, regardless of the circumstances and opportunities that present themselves. So, that's maybe how I see this.
I appreciate that worldview. I think there is a lot of luck in randomness. I think there's also a lot of, you have to walk through the door. You had to move to Dublin without a job. You had to take that call in the parking lot. Luck doesn't show up unless you walk through the door in some capacity, taking the call or making the move. So you've made a lot of really great moves, Daniel, on the chessboard of life that have led to some really wonderful outcomes, which is great.
Yeah, no, too. And I think it's important to, sometimes I like to say sometimes we have luck blindness, right? I think it's important to be to have your radar turned on for these things. It's part of the preparation process, I think, is like having the sensitivity, right? Being you prepared, like to watch out for things. I really feel, and I certainly been there myself as well, that sometimes we go through life a little bit with the blinders on. By the way, this is interesting, maybe a topic we can delve into more. Also with regards to opportunities, that we like to think of ourselves sometimes of, oh, I'm a software programmer, so that's the only thing I will do forever. I was guilty of thinking like this. Probably many people, again, think with just one label. But when I sort of, stopped thinking in terms of the label and started thinking of what can I do? What do I like doing? What I might be good at? You start seeing other opportunities that don't fit exactly that label, right? And, luck finds a way, because now you have a more surface area, right, for luck to to hit, right, metaphorically speaking. So yeah, there's that aspect as well. Preparation, lack of blindness, right? Sometimes, taking some action, right, to invite things to happen to you, and a few other things like that. Yeah.
A lot of reasons that people give for not going out on their own is the high failure rate of small businesses. There's a lot, again, talking about luck, there's a lot of luck that does go into it, but there's also a lot of action that has to be taken. I'd love to talk more about what ventures you actually ended up starting. What was the first, or maybe there was more than one that you initially hitched your wagon to when you left Amazon?
Yeah, so this is a cautionary tale, because I think I did almost every mistake in the book for the first 9 months or so. So again, a bit of a privileged thing. I was a bit lucky. I had some decent amount of savings, right? So I remember calculating that if I didn't change at all my lifestyle, so back then, my wife wasn't working. We had just had 2 small kids. So we had no income, basically, right after I quit. And I thought, okay, we had about 4.5 years worth of liquid savings, that if we don't earn anything and we keep our lifestyle like this, I felt there's plenty of time. And initially, naively, I said, something will work in this time, right? And I think that was already a bad attitude, because I think it's important to have a sense of urgency. It's almost like, that buffer almost harmed me and making me be a bit too complacent in the beginning. Again, it seems almost irrational to say I should have had a shorter runway. Again, like, I'm not necessarily implying that, but I should have convinced myself to not rely too much on that safety net. So this was already a part, because I think what it led to, I felt I did this big change, right? And now I'm not going to settle for something suboptimal. I'm going to try to build my ideal business. And I try to imagine what that would be. And, I was still liked software. And when I was at Amazon, I had specialized in building databases. So there was this sort of niche that I was good at and experienced in. And I thought, okay, I'm going to build a business build a database company, a database software business. I felt there was a need in the market for something that didn't exist yet. And I thought about it very much top down like this. Oh yeah, there's a gap. There's what I can do. I think I'm going to be good at this. And the other mistake was that I treated this project very much like I was treating projects when I was an employee. Like when I was an employee, the company would say, yeah, we need to go after this market. We come up with a plan. We say, yeah, we're going to launch it at the end of next year. Let's have milestones to make sure we're on track, right? And let's just work hard to get it done, right? And every day you're tracking whether you're making progress. It was a process a project management process that I was familiar with and I knew worked in those arrangements, right? You get eventually, there might be some hurdles along the way, but you figure them out and you get to the goal. And I thought I'm going to do the same thing. And I think what I underestimated again was the amount of uncertainty and luck and opacity that comes with doing something in the actual market. Like now, the judge for my work wasn't going to be my boss or my employer or my boss's boss. No, my judge was going to be the market. And the market isn't even some person or someone you can just impress. It's basically whether you get collectively people to take the wallet out of their pocket and give you some of their hard-earned money. And that's very uncertain. And actually, even if I look back at my time at AWS, I only realized this later after I left. AWS is considered one of the most successful enterprises ever, right? In terms of growth and profitability, I think it's $90 billion in revenue grew in basically the last 10 years. It's usually considered, something spectacular. And when I think about it, right, I mean, it might not be that surprising. Amazon has amazing brand, lots of assets, all those resources, lots of employees that are very skilled and business leaders, and all the things and data about the market, about customers, all the advantages you could imagine a company like Amazon has them. And it's interesting, I joined AWS when it was a suite. This was a very early, late 2009, where it was just a suite about 4 products. And when I left, it was almost 200. So I started to realize that despite Amazon having all these benefits, all these advantages, all the resources it could have, all the data about customers and the market, all the engineers, all the top business leaders, Jeff Bezos at the top, and everything else. Out of those 200 products, there were only a handful that were really making any meaningful money. The others were breaking even, maybe losing money, and so on and so forth. Very similar to what we hear about like book publishers. They get 1 or 2 bestsellers and the rest just break even, or movie studios in Hollywood. They get 1 hit and the rest just, mediocre success. It was very much like that. And it sort of made me realize that the market is very much like that. Nobody knows anything is the hyperbolic claim, right? Which doesn't mean you can't learn how to play better. It's a bit like poker, right? I mean, it's a game of chance, but you can get better at playing your cards. And the market is very much like that. So I started basically to get back to the question that I did all the mistakes here because I spent 9 months building this thing. I thought I was doing marketing right as well, was building in public on X, sharing my progress. I signed up. I had about 4,000 people on my waiting list wanting to use the product. I thought I was getting a lot of validation signs that were important. I had some good, high quality endorsements as well. Top companies, Vercel and Netlify, like public endorsements from their CEOs, got to talk with them. The product I was doing was related to their business. When I launched it, my launch tweet got like 500,000 views. Again, lots of attention, and the business made about $2,000 in the first day, which was okay. This is just a start. But like by the very next day, I immediately started to notice yeah, this $2,000, but this was $2,000 yearly, not even a monthly recurring revenue, right? So it's nothing basically. I was like, okay, this is still a little. What is it going to take for this business to be making, say, $100,000 yearly? And I was quickly started to realize, there's no obvious path. Right? It's not like, oh, I just need to add another feature or do something. Right? And I started thinking, what if I spend another 9 months working on this thing and it doesn't get there? Yes, I had 4 years of savings, already wiped out almost a quarter. If I do another iteration of this, I might wipe another quarter. And 9 months pass in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, I started to realize, look, this path is incredibly uncertain. I'm not liking it. I was scared that I will end up, wiping out all my savings and having to go back to a full-time job, which I really, really wanted to avoid. Right? So there was a bit of a crisis of anxiety, I would say, in that very short period. But then I think it led to an epiphany, which I'm super grateful for very quickly, because then I realized, look, I actually don't care about this product. I mean, I don't care whether the money that I make comes from this product or not. All I care about is sustaining this lifestyle that I currently have. I was enjoying. This was 9 months of, again, I wasn't just taking it easy. Again, I was working hard, but it was independent work. I was choosing my hours. I was choosing what to work on. I was spending lots more time with my family, right? And sort of having the flexibility, not doing what I felt was purposeless work, right? I was really liking this style. And sort of the epiphany was, all I want to do is just maintain this lifestyle. And like I started thinking, like, what are some low hanging fruit that I could make? I could go after that allow me to make some money just to pay the bills, pay my mortgage, pay utilities, just to basically stop bleeding money. And this talk about like blindness, just that, it felt like I removed the blinders. Initially, I was just thinking user base, which was the name of this project that I was working on. How can I make user base work? My blinders were literally focused, like pinhole dot. And suddenly it was like I removed the entire mask. Right? And now I was starting to think, what if I take some freelancing gigs here? What if I do a small project? What if I do something that maybe makes me $1,000, not $1,000 a month, but maybe something I could do in a day that makes me $1,000 or in a weekend. And I started seeing these little projects here and there, right? And this is what led to the small bets idea, right? Basically, is that thinking small is, in my opinion, right, the way to tame the uncertainty of self-employment. Previously I was thinking about the upside. This project user base had a huge upside. If it succeeded, it could make millions. It's a big market, whatever. I didn't think much about the downside. Like, what if I fail? Right? What if I spend a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then it goes nowhere? Right? What about that? After that epiphany, I flipped the dynamic. What can I do to clip the downside, to make sure that I stay in this game, to survive, and let the upside take care of itself? Like the upside, whatever it is, as it comes, if I make more than I'm expecting, it's a bonus. I'll take it. I'll be grateful for it. But I just want to persevere, right? I mean, survive in this game indefinitely. And occasionally I joke. It's not a joke really, right? But on X I post this usually around New Year's resolution time frames where I say, you know, my business plan is just not going back to a full-time job. I mean, this is my North Star almost, which sounds very unambitious, right? But it's really helps me clarify decisions in terms of even what opportunities do I take. It's very much whether those things are conducive to improving the odds of me staying in the game, basically, like staying independent, self-employed, controlling my own time and so forth, right? So instead of thinking what's the ideal business, what's a business that could make millions, I would say, how can I make $1,000 by the end of October with my own skills, right, out there in the market? It's not the $1,000 that's going to change your life, but it's like getting that small win, right? And then the next month you might say, how can I make $3,000? And I'm almost certain it will feel a bit easier. You learn what works and what doesn't, what's more likely to work, what you're good at, what you're less good at. You build more connections, you build more reputations, you get more testimonials. All these things are assets, right, that you keep with you that you can continue to use for later projects, for later offers, and so on and so forth. That you just become better at fending for yourself. Right? So, yeah, like if there was one recommendation for me is like to, again, sounds almost the opposite of ambition, but to start small. Go after those low-hanging fruit, and let small success bring with it more success. That there's this phenomenon that happens often. Small win helps you get another small win, another small win, and another small win, right? And eventually it starts to get a little bit easier over time.
Well, and I'm so grateful that I stumbled across small bets, because I have enjoyed what I've learned through small bets far more, and in a way have found it more bucket filling. The newsletter, which makes me no money, but I love it. And every week I'm disciplined to it. And it's a skill. You talked about learning, which I'd like to dive in a little bit more to, but the discipline of learning something new and of keeping that, continuity. If I'm committing to this, I'm making myself proud. You talked about pride. How do you measure that success now?
So, professionally, honestly, right, my measure of success is, just honestly, right, it's just making a relatively stable, predictable income to sustain my current lifestyle and the lifestyle of my family. Again, it's really my guiding star, because this gives me the optionality, I feel, right, to um, play my other cards in any way I want. Before we started recording, I was saying how I spend about 2 months of the summer back in Malta, where I have family there. That's, and I have to admit that, that period takes a hit on my business because I have less time, even though I can work remotely. But it's that trade-off that I certainly take, knowing that is what's going to happen. Um, and yeah, it sort of fulfills this objective. Like, this is enough, right, to live comfortably, and so on and so forth. In terms of ambitions and pride, and so on and so forth, I really, something that I feel proud of is, and this happens a lot, especially with my current business, right, the small bets community, which you're part of. Right? This is the kind of business that it's almost like the opposite of like a passive. Many businesses, almost no business is passive, right? But this is the one that you almost have to keep reinventing the product. And actually, I'm going through a pivot right now, like literally, right, this moment. And I've went through already several, at least 3 or 4 major ones, and I really find a lot of satisfaction, right, with finding fitness with the market, I like to call it. I try to understand, but I accept that, things are just opaque sometimes, right? It's just nobody really knows. Again, like the market, nobody seems to know anything about how the market exactly works. But I did take it as a challenge on myself to try to find adaptations, to just find what people want, what I can put on the market, and so on and so forth. And if I look at my trajectory, like if I look at just even my income graph, it's very interesting, right? There's like these spikes, and then sort of they start to occasionally trend down again, just because things stop working, and then I have another spike, and then it's like another spike, and I'm proud of those spikes, honestly. I'm proud that I managed to bring life back to it. I like to use this phrase that it's important to treat our projects like cattle, not like pets. And where the idea is, like pets, part of the family, we love them, we love them unconditionally. If they have something, if they're not feeling well, we take them to the vet. We spend absurd amount of money on our pets, to make them feel happy. Cattle on the farm, unfortunately, they're not equal citizens. They're seen as a business unit, right? And I think the discipline in not falling too much in love with your projects is important, like a disciplined investor in finance. Right? When you're investing, you can't fall in love with the things in your portfolio, right? Because it will start to impair your judgment. And I think same thing with business projects, business ideas. I was loving this project, I was liking it, enjoyed doing it, but it's not working anymore. Like the cow on the farm is not producing any more milk, right? And Sometimes you have to let them go. Sometimes you have to slaughter them, sell them for for scraps, right? Sometimes you can intervene, right, and do something. But even the intervention has to make sense. This doesn't mean you don't take pride in your work. It's just the acceptance, right, that the market doesn't care. Right, the market is not some person. Right, the market is the whims of the market. Right, it's the phrasing. Right? It's just whatever people are buying, price points. There could be great products that are not commercially viable, right? And they could be commercially viable today, but they stop being, maybe because of competition, maybe because expectations change. In tech nowadays, we see a lot of this with AI, making big disruptions into what was good yesterday. Now expectations are changing, right? So there's just one example, of course, right? Because we're seeing lots of rapid change, but there are many other things, especially with what I was doing with communities and educational content. There was some similar disruption with the pandemic and post-pandemic things, right? So certainly during the pandemic and immediately afterwards, there was a lot of demand for people to improve their skills, spend more time online and interacting with others, and so on and so forth. And now, especially, I think this year, 2024, I feel we went back to pre-COVID times where people are back busy. Many have returned back to the office. The appetite for joining live classes diminished, right? And that was, that's my speculation of the reason why things are diminishing there. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe partly right, or whatever, but I have to react to it, right? And the reaction is my challenge now. I mean, how I'm going to resolve this, right? To again bring new life into this business, right? And so yeah, I hope that sort of answers it, but sort of how I see that's the ambitious part of me, I would say, like not necessarily financially in terms of I want some big exit or whatever, then sort of dealing with these small decisions along the way.
I know you said not
Mm-hmm.
to get attached to the market.
Yeah.
It's not a person and the market shifts, but do you have to love the work that you do in order to do one of these small bets?
Yeah, I think it would be much harder, right, if you dislike the work, right? And I think using it, I think making it a requirement that it has to be a passion project uh, hurts you more than helps you, because I think it would disqualify lots of things that are not maybe ideal, right? So I think if you start staying too idealistically, again, it's a bit of that luck blindness, right? You stop seeing things that are good, maybe not ideal, but they would still make good commercial projects. Your passion project might be great as a hobby or as a learning experience, but whether it makes a great commercial business, it's another question. It's important, right? I think part of the selection criteria, certainly of mine, is like, will I like doing this? There are certainly many other things that I had the opportunity to do that I felt this would allow my life. Again, because I like to think about lifestyle optimization, lifestyle being a very vague word. But, the time we spend working is part of our lifestyle as well, right? So it has to be something that you're not dreading doing.
Okay.
Um, but also, I think, especially in the beginning, when you're going after those small wins, I think even, especially back there, right, I think it's important to not over optimize on the passion side, right? I would rather go and do some things that make some money, even if they're not ideal, because you can become more selective when things get easier. And this happened to me, right, over the last few years, right? I'm doing this, but I have the opportunity to do something better and to stop the other one, right? There's this saying that I love, right? I mean, to thrive, you need to serve. To thrive, you need to first survive. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. It's to win the race, you have to finish the race. I mean, there's all these sort of phrases that are important. Basically, they emphasize the surviving part, right? You need to make sure you stay in the game sufficiently long enough to discover viability for the more ideal projects, right? And I feel that that is happening for me as well, right? To these last 6 years, every year I feel like the mix of things that I'm doing is more things that I enjoy, right? And the things that I least enjoy that have either fallen off or I replace them with something better. So
my last question for you today is, sitting where I am, you seem like an absolute success to me. And when we talked the last time before, when I asked you if you do this podcast with me, I said, do you feel like a success? Because I sort of feel like a really average bear here in this life, where and I bet a lot of people do too, and they think, oh, there's no way in hell that I could do this. And I am wondering, Daniel, why were you able to do this? Not, I don't mean just because you had 4.5 years of financial runway and a supportive spouse and the Amazon role behind you. Not, I don't mean that. I mean your character, your fiber. I mean, you said you had this real guiding principle, but what has made you stay running in the race to the point you're going to win it?
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned success and our own self measurement, because maybe something that helped me, and this might have been something that I had forever. That is that I never really accepted the typical societal measures of success, and actually I would go beyond that. I don't even think in those terms, to be honest. Right, where I never ask myself, do I feel successful? It's not how I very much settled into this. Do I feel proud of how I lived this year, right, or this month, or this quarter, or this day, even, right? And I think it's very liberating, right? Because again, like it's like life throws random things at you, right? And even minor things, like setbacks, right? You're working on something and you get sick for a little bit, or you get a cold, right? It's a annoying thing that we all experience, right? But it's sort of sometimes I feel again like a bit of satisfaction in how I dealt with it and how I managed to rearrange my work to just not let it get to me, right? That if I wake up with a sore throat, I say, oh my god, I have all these meetings, whatever. Again, like sometimes I surprise myself that I'm happy that I just was able to. Again, it sounds like a very silly thing, right? But I think it's more, it's an important part, right? Because for example, another thing that I see many entrepreneurs struggle with is growth, right? In terms of as the business growing, there's like this expectation, right, that the business should be making more money than last year and the previous year and the previous, and so on and so forth. To be completely honest with you, 2023, last year, I was the first time actually that I had a drop in net profits. Right? Actually, the revenue was a bit higher, but expenses were higher as well. Right? So I made less than the previous year and maybe even the year before that. Does it bother me? Certainly, I'm not like I would have preferred for it to be higher, but it was still sufficient, right, to live my life. I still spent summer with my family. My kids still got everything that they needed. We're still living comfortably. We're still saving enough. Everything is still relatively going well, right? And I this attitude has helped me, right? Because I think I'm not very goal driven, and I really believe sometimes that being too goal driven can be counterproductive. And there's a bit of there's nuance to it, right? Because again, like maybe my goal is the survival part, right, and making this sustainable, right, making sure, and that certainly has helped me, right, in making sure that I'm doing the right things to make it happen. But then very much, whatever happens, the spillover, the excess. If it happens, I take it. Which, by the way, I had very much this attitude when I was an employee at Amazon as well. And this might sound very counter to typical career advice. Like, I never asked, what do I need to do to get promoted? I never asked for a salary increase. I did some things that certainly have helped me, but very much just taking things that way, right? Where I'm just going to do my best, whatever happens, happens, and I'll take it. And this might not even, I'm certain this is not the best way to maximize opportunity. Like if you want to make the most money, there are strategies there. You can play your cards better. But I think this attitude has helped me indirectly, again, in sort of letting things be the way they are without the setbacks affecting me negatively or discouraging me, right? And again, they almost fuel me, like I told, like even with the example of like minor setbacks here and there, right, where you take pride in the resilience. That's actually something I really like the resilience. I keep thinking this up, resilience, surviving, right? It's sort of this mindset of I'm just going to figure it out, fending for myself. Very much focus on the downside rather than on the downside protection, right? Rather than the upside, which is in tech, especially in our field, is very different. Especially in the Silicon Valley mentality of you try to apply to one of these incubators for startups. One of the first questions they ask you, how is this business going to become a $10 billion business? What? I'm just thinking, how can I pay my mortgage with what I'm doing? Right? I mean, it's very 180-degree different attitudes. I'm not going to say this may be the best thing for everyone in a circumstance. Maybe when you're still in your 20s, the Silicon Valley attitude has benefits. But I certainly think, the way I'm doing things is under documented. Let's put it that way. You don't see a lot of glamour around this way of approaching things. So I try to do my part. This is how the Small Bets community started. Sort of promoting this idea, and I think it resonates with lots of people. And maybe it's again maybe it's people in a certain part in their life, right, where this is the arrangement that they prefer.
Well, I can tell you, 4 weeks ago, I probably wouldn't have grasped this profound truth as much as I do today. After being a digital nomad for 4 weeks, and this is my 10th Airbnb I'm sleeping in, every time I turn the handle of that door, I have no idea what's waiting on the other side for me. I hold my breath. But the art of surrender is what you're describing, is that there's surrender to luck. There's surrender to catastrophic events of life, bad weather, sickness, right? Loss of a loved one. I was of the mindset to always be wanting more and more and more money, bigger houses, nicer cars, all the things that the American dream, right? And then getting rid of all of that and stepping out of it. And I'm just happy to be alive. I'm truly happy to survive. I've never felt that before. So as you were sitting there with this concept, I think it actually is amazing, because we are all here to survive and thrive. It's not just to survive, but I think there's, to your point, the more resilience you build and that pride in your ability to, I feel proud of myself every time I turn that doorknob and I walk through that door and I'm able to handle what's on the other side of it. There's a lot of self pride there. And I don't think that's something that we're encouraged to look at in that type of context.
I agree. No, great example. 100%.
Well, and I was drawn to the Small Bets community, not just for the idea of liberating myself, which it did ultimately end up being a part of my journey of liberating myself from working for somebody else, but to learn other skill sets, to feel that sense of again, that pride of, I know how to make an online course now, or I know how to write a newsletter, or I have this community of people, I know how to ask for help. I know how to call you up and ask you for something, and intentionally build a life that I can be proud of. So thank you, Daniel. You and Louis have done an incredible job with the Small Bets community. I don't know what I did right in the universe to line that star up for me that I was able to find you, but thank you again, truly, for being in my orbit and for joining me today, because I think there's so much wisdom, and you're living a life you should be hella proud of. And I'm proud of you. Without any ounce of condescension, I say that.
No, thank you, Lauren. And no, very happy we met. So great. No, I love this topic. Yeah, so glad you gave me a chance to talk about these things. So thank you, Lauren.